I never believed in the old stories. Growing up, I'd heard tales of creatures lurking in the shadows, spirits that could take the form of animals, waiting to pounce on the unsuspecting. But I always thought they were just that. Stories. At least that's what I used to think. Everything changed one late summer night. I was on a solo road trip, something I'd planned for months. Work had been getting to me and I needed a break, a chance to clear my head. The long way home through the Southwest seemed perfect, an escape into the vast, quiet desert. The land there has a kind of quiet that's hard to describe. It's like the world holds its breath as you pass through, waiting, watching. I didn't think much of it at first, just another stretch of road. But that night something changed. And now every time I close my eyes, I see it. I hear it. And I know it wasn't just a story. The day started like any other on my trip. The sun blazed in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert as I drove. The air was dry, the kind that makes your skin crackle and your throat itch. Somewhere between Gallup and Window Rock, Arizona, it was just me, my old Jeep, and miles of open road. I wasn't in a hurry. This trip was about taking my time, letting the road lead me wherever it wanted. Earlier, I'd stopped at a small diner, one of those places stuck in the 50s with faded vinyl booths and a waitress who called you hun. I'd had a burger, a slice of pie, and coffee that tasted like burnt dirt but was exactly what I needed. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, I thought about finding a place to pull over for the night. But as the hours passed, I kept driving. Something about the way the light hit the landscape, the way the shadows grew longer, deeper, kept me going. It was peaceful, in a way. The kind of peace you don't find in the city. I was alone, and for the first time in a long while, that felt like a good thing. It was just after sunset when I first saw it. The sky had turned a deep purple, the last rays of sunlight slipping behind the horizon. I was rounding a bend in the road when something caught my eye. There, in the middle of the road, was a coyote, or at least that's what I thought it was. It was sitting there, perfectly still, right in the center of the asphalt. I slowed the Jeep to a crawl, my hands gripping the wheel as I squinted at the animal. It was big, bigger than any coyote I'd ever seen. Its fur was matted and tangled, patches of it missing, revealing raw, pink skin underneath. But it was the eyes that really got me. Yellow, almost glowing, and staring at me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I honked the horn, expecting it to bolt into the brush. But it didn't move. It just sat there, watching. A knot tightened in my stomach. Something was wrong. After what felt like an eternity, I decided to go around it. I eased the Jeep to the right, the tires crunching over the loose gravel at the edge of the road. As I passed, the coyote turned its head to follow me, those yellow eyes never leaving mine, and then it started to move. At first, it was just a trot, keeping pace with the Jeep as I slowly accelerated. I told myself it was just a curious animal, nothing more. But as I picked up speed, so did it. It broke into a run, its body moving in a way that was too smooth, too fast. A thick, uneasy rhythm pulsed through my chest while a clammy chill spread across the back of my neck, prickling like icy fingers. I pushed the gas pedal down, the Jeep roaring as it sped up, but the coyote kept pace, its legs a blur as it raced alongside me. I glanced in the side mirror, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a coyote anymore. It was still running on all fours, but the shape was changing. The limbs stretched, the fur receded, and in its place was something else, something that shouldn't exist. The head began to morph, the snout shortening, the ears flattening until it looked more human than animal. But those eyes, they stayed the same. Bright, burning yellow, fixed on me with a hunger that turned my blood to ice. I slammed the pedal to the floor, the Jeep lurching forward as it hit 70, then 80 miles per hour. The landscape blurred past, but no matter how fast I went, the thing kept pace. It was running on two legs now, its arms swinging by its sides, a grotesque parody of a human sprinting beside my car. I could hear it now, too, its breath ragged and labored, but beneath that, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate in the air around me. "What the hell is happening?" I whispered, my voice shaking. But there was no one to answer. I was alone in the middle of the desert, and something impossible was chasing me. I stole a glance in the rearview mirror, hoping, praying that it had stopped. But it hadn't. It was still there, a monstrous silhouette against the fading light, those eyes glowing like embers in the night. My thoughts were a jumble. Panic, fear, disbelief. How could this be real? But there was no time for answers. I had to get away. The road stretched out endlessly in front of me, but I couldn't keep driving forever. Then I saw it, a glimmer of light in the distance. A town, maybe, or just a few houses. But it was something. It was hope. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white, and aimed the Jeep toward the lights. The thing beside me let out a wail, a sound so inhuman, so filled with rage that it made my skin crawl. But I didn't look at it. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd lose control. Just a little further, just a little faster. And maybe, just maybe, I'd make it out alive. The lights of the distant town flickered like a mirage, teasing me with the promise of safety. But between me and that small slice of civilization, something unholy was closing in. The Jeep's engine roared as I pushed it to its limits, the tires screaming against the rough pavement, but no matter how fast I went, that thing kept pace, never more than a few feet away. And then it got bolder. The next time I glanced in the side mirror, it wasn't just running anymore. It was lunging. Its twisted half-human body launching itself toward the Jeep like a predator pouncing on prey. I swerved hard to the right, narrowly avoiding a collision, but I could hear it now. A low, guttural snarl, almost like a sick imitation of a human voice. It was close enough that I could see its face, what little there was of it. A sickening mixture of fur and flesh, twisted into a mockery of both man and beast. I could barely think. My mind was a storm of panic and disbelief. The thing was real. It was right there, clawing at the edge of my reality, tearing through the thin veil that separated my world from whatever hell it had crawled out of. I tried to focus, tried to think of what to do next, but my thoughts were as slippery as the road beneath me. The Jeep jolted and skidded as I pushed it harder, the landscape blurring into a smear of darkness and light. I kept glancing back, hoping to see the thing retreat, but it was relentless, and then in one terrifying moment it lunged again, this time smashing against the side of the Jeep with a force that rattled every bone in my body. I screamed, a raw, instinctual sound that tore from my throat without permission. The Jeep fishtailed wildly, gravel spraying from under the tires as I fought to keep it on the road. The creature slammed into the Jeep again, and for a split second, I saw its eyes through the passenger window, those terrible yellow eyes burning with a malevolence so deep it felt like it was reaching into my soul, dragging me down into a darkness I couldn't escape. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let it win. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. The town was closer now, the lights brighter. But so was the creature. It wasn't just running beside me anymore. It was trying to get inside. Its claws scraped against the door, leaving deep, jagged gashes in the metal. The window cracked under the pressure of its assault, spiderwebbing with each blow. "Please," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to the creature, the Jeep, or some higher power I'd never believed in until now. "Please, just let me make it." And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the attack stopped. The thing pulled back, its face twisted into something like confusion, maybe even fear. It let out a sound that was halfway between a growl and a scream, a noise that shook me to my core. I dared to look just for a second out of the cracked window, and I saw it, really saw it, for the first time. It was standing upright now, fully human in shape, but still something far less, or perhaps far more, than human. Its skin was pale and sickly, mottled with patches of fur that seemed to shift and move of their own accord. Its mouth, if you could call it that, was a mess of sharp teeth, bared in a snarl that dripped with saliva. But it was the eyes, those yellow, burning eyes, that froze me in place. They were the eyes of a predator, a thing that lived to hunt, to kill, and it was afraid. The light from the town had finally reached us. A wide, sweeping beam from a pair of headlights on a truck that was heading in our direction. The creature took a step back, then another, before turning and sprinting off into the desert, disappearing into the night as quickly as it had appeared. I didn't stop to think. I just kept driving, my foot still jammed on the gas pedal, my hands trembling on the wheel. The truck passed by in a blur, the driver giving me a curious look as he went by, but I didn't dare stop. Not until I was safely in the town, where the lights were bright and the roads were paved, where people lived and things like that didn't belong. I pulled into a gas station, the first one I saw, and killed the engine. The silence was deafening, but I couldn't bring myself to get out of the Jeep. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. The world felt like it was spinning out of control, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, making everything feel sharp and too real. I could still see it, in my mind. The creature, the way it had looked at me, as if it knew something I didn't. As if it had marked me. I don't know how long I sat there, staring out the windshield at nothing, before someone knocked on the window. I jumped, my heart slamming against my ribs, and turned to see a man standing outside. He looked to be in his 50s, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen more than they ever should have. "You okay?" he asked, his voice muffled through the glass. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. I rolled down the window, just a crack. "Saw you pull in like a bat out of hell," he said, his tone more curious than concerned. "You see something out there?" I didn't know how to answer that. How could I explain what I'd seen? Hell, I wasn't even sure I believed it myself, but I couldn't get the words out. I just shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. The man studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Well, whatever it was, it's gone now. You're safe here." Safe. The word sounded foreign, hollow, but I clung to it like a lifeline. "Thanks," I managed to croak, my voice rough and barely audible. He gave me a small, understanding smile and nodded again before walking away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the darkness that still lingered just beyond the lights. I stayed in that gas station parking lot for a long time. Long after the man had gone, long after the lights of the town had started to feel almost normal. I should have left, checked into a motel, tried to sleep, but I couldn't bring myself to move. It was as if I was afraid that if I left the safety of the lights, that thing would come back. That it was still out there, waiting for me, watching. Finally, when exhaustion started to weigh down on me like a heavy blanket, I forced myself to start the Jeep and drive to the nearest motel. It was a cheap, rundown place, the kind of place where the carpet smelled faintly of mildew and the sheets were rough and thin. But it had a bed, and that was all I needed. I collapsed onto the mattress, not even bothering to take off my shoes, and stared up at the ceiling. The events of the night replayed in my mind over and over like a broken record, each detail more vivid and terrifying than the last. I kept thinking about those eyes, those yellow burning eyes, and the way they seemed to see right through me to something deeper, something darker. Sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, it was filled with nightmares. I dreamed of the creature, of it chasing me down the endless desert road, of it catching me, dragging me down into the darkness. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, the echo of its growl still ringing in my ears. Morning came, and with it a strange sense of detachment, as if the events of the night before had happened to someone else. But the scratches on the Jeep, the cracked window, those were real. And so was the fear that still gnawed at my gut, the feeling that I was being watched. I knew I couldn't stay in that town. I had to keep moving, had to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever was out there. But as I drove away, the sun rising in the rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving something behind, something unfinished, something that would never really let me go. And in the quiet moments, when the road was long and the desert stretched out endlessly on either side, I could still feel it, like a shadow in the corner of my vision, a whisper in the back of my mind. It wasn't over, not by a long shot.